Question mark quote. She froze for a second, the knife in her hand hovering above the cutting board. Then she smiled, too quickly, too carefully. Of course not, she said. Why would you ask that? I shrugged. You just seem different. She came over, kissed my cheek. Maybe I just needed a break. Maybe you're finally noticing me again. Her words stung because they carried a truth I couldn't deny. I hadn't noticed her. Not really. Life had dulled us both. Work, bills, routines, the dull ache of responsibilities. But now, she was alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this glow was mine to share, not a gift from someone else. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. And when I kissed her that night, tasting again that faint trace of wine, of something foreign, I wondered if I was kissing her or the shadow of the man who had touched her before me. The glow lasted for weeks. She laughed more, touched me more, talked more. Our friends even noticed. One of them pulled me aside and said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. She looks amazing." I smiled, nodded, pretended to take credit. But inside, I knew I had done nothing. I had simply been given the leftovers of something she couldn't admit. Then came the day of the lab result. She had scheduled a routine health check, something she did every year. She was meticulous about her health, always had been. I thought nothing of it. But when she came home from the clinic, the glow was gone. She walked in pale, her eyes wide with fear. Her hands trembled as she clutched the envelope. I asked what was wrong, but she didn't answer right away. She went upstairs, closed the door, and stayed there for an hour. When she finally came out, she looked like a different person. The vibrant, glowing woman who had returned from the conference was gone. In her place stood a wife heavy with dread, haunted by something she couldn't share. She smiled faintly when I asked again, but it was forced, brittle. "It's nothing," she said. Just stress." But I knew better. I knew that envelope had stripped away the glow. Whatever had happened at that conference, whatever had ignited her, the lab result had turned it into a shadow she would carry silently. And that was when I realized, our lives would never be the same again. If the glow of her return unsettled me, the weeks that followed left me with 1,000 quiet torments I couldn't put into words. Living with her after that conference was like sharing a house with both a stranger and a ghost. She was my wife, yes, her body, her voice, her laugh were the same, but underneath, there was something altered, something she refused to name. It began subtly. The first change was in her phone. She had always been casual with it before, leaving it on the counter, on the sofa, even in the bathroom without a second thought. Now, it was glued to her hand, tucked into her pocket or slipped into her purse as if it were a part of her. When it buzzed with a message, she would glance at me before unlocking it quickly, reading with a flicker of a smile she tried to swallow. I asked once who it was. She said, "Just work," and slid the phone face down on the table. I nodded, though inside, a knot tightened in my stomach. Work had never made her smile like that. Work had never made her cheeks flush or her lips press together as if to trap a secret. The second change was her body. She took extra time dressing in the mornings now, choosing outfits that clung to her curves, painting her lips with shades she had abandoned years ago. She looked stunning, too stunning for the small office she worked in, too stunning for the errands she claimed she was running. I would watch her adjust her blouse in the mirror, watch her slip into heels that clicked across the kitchen tiles, and wonder who she was dressing for. I will never forget the day she came back from that conference. I had been married to her for more than a decade, long enough to know every curve of her smile, every tired sigh, every guarded silence. But that morning, when she stepped through the door with her suitcase rolling behind her, something was different. I saw it instantly. There was a radiance about her, a glow I hadn't seen in years, not even on our wedding day. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself it was the usual lightness that came with being away from home for a few days. Conferences had always recharged her. She loved the attention, the compliments from colleagues, the small thrill of being recognized for her work. She was brilliant at what she did, and I was proud of her. But this glow was not the simple satisfaction of professional validation. This was something else, something deeper, warmer, more dangerous. She kissed me when she arrived, but even that kiss was different. Her lips lingered on mine, soft, tasting faintly of wine though she had just landed. Her eyes searched mine with an intensity that almost made me step back. I wanted to ask her about the conference right away, to hear how it went, but she was strangely vague. "It was good," she said. "Busy. Tiring." She smiled, but the way her fingers brushed her hair back, The way her cheeks flushed as if recalling something private, told me she was holding something back. I carried her suitcase upstairs. She followed slowly, humming to herself, a tune I didn't recognize. When I set the bag down, she laughed softly, almost shyly, as if something amusing had crossed her mind. That laugh clung to me like perfume. It wasn't the laugh she gave when I cracked one of my corny jokes. It was the laugh of a woman remembering something deliciously secret. I should have asked then. I should have pressed her about what had happened. But I didn't. I let it go. Maybe because I was afraid of the answer. Maybe because, deep down, I already knew. That night, as we lay in bed, she curled closer to me than she had in months. Her skin was warm, softer somehow, as if her body had been awakened. She kissed me eagerly, pulling me into her, as though she had rediscovered passion. For a moment, I thought I had my wife back. For a moment, I thought the distance that had crept into our marriage was gone. But it didn't feel like her. It felt like I was sharing her body with someone else's ghost. There was a hunger in her movements, a boldness in the way she guided me, touched me, whispered things in my ear that she had never dared before. It thrilled me and unnerved me at the same time. I wanted to believe she was simply inspired by the excitement of her trip. Yet part of me knew that someone else had stirred this fire, someone else had taught her these new ways of moving, of moaning, of surrendering. She fell asleep afterward with a satisfied smile. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with unspoken questions. I wanted to shake her awake and demand the truth. But I didn't. I told myself it was better not to know. The following days only deepened my unease. She was glowing, still glowing. She walked lighter, spoke softer, dressed with more care. She checked her phone more often than before, smiling faintly at messages she wouldn't let me see. When I asked her what was so funny, she shrugged, said it was just work. But work had never made her cheeks flush, had never made her eyes sparkle like that. One evening, I watched her in the kitchen as she prepared dinner. She moved gracefully, almost playfully, humming again under her breath. I leaned against the doorway and simply stared at her. She caught me looking and laughed. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile. But inside, my stomach twisted. She was beautiful, more beautiful than she had been in years, but she was also a stranger. That night, I couldn't hold back anymore. I asked her directly, did something happen at the conference? At night, she was different too. In bed, she touched me with a fire that both thrilled and unnerved me. She whispered things she had never whispered before, guided me with a boldness I hadn't known she possessed. I should have been grateful, I should have reveled in this rediscovery of passion. But every kiss felt borrowed, every moan echoed with the presence of another man. I was her husband, but I was also her alibi. I didn't confront her directly. Instead, I studied her, waiting for the cracks in her facade. I noticed how she avoided certain questions, how her eyes darted away when I asked about the conference. I noticed the way she guarded the bathroom door when she showered, taking longer than before, emerging with a softness in her skin that spoke of rituals learned in someone else's hands. It was torture, this half-knowing. To suspect but not prove, to feel but not confirm. I wanted to shout, to demand, to drag the truth out of her. But some cowardly part of me held back. Because knowing for sure would change everything, and I wasn't ready for that change. Not yet. One evening, I caught her humming again. It was that same tune she had carried from the conference, soft and playful, like a lover's song. She was standing at the sink, her sleeves rolled up, soap bubbles on her hands. She looked beautiful, radiant in a way that hurt me. I walked up behind her, slid my arms around her waist, pressed my lips to her neck. She startled slightly, then relaxed into me. "You're in a good mood," she teased. "Just noticing you," I said. "You seem happy lately." She turned her head, gave me a quick kiss. "Isn't that a good thing?" "Of course," I replied. But inside, I thought, happiness shouldn't look like guilt dressed in silk. Later that night, after she had fallen asleep, I lay awake listening to her breathing. I wondered what she dreamt about, wondered if she dreamt of me at all. The glow she had carried back was still there, but it was changing, hardening into something sharper. The sweetness of her return had soured into secrecy. And then there was the envelope. She had tucked it away in her drawer, hidden beneath stacks of scarves and sweaters. I found it by accident one Saturday while searching for a missing charger. I didn't open it, though the temptation burned me. It was from the clinic. I recognized the logo instantly. My heart thudded in my chest as I slid the drawer shut. She had told me the checkup was fine. She had smiled too easily when I asked, said the doctor just recommended more rest. But if that were true, why hide the paper? Why bury it beneath layers of fabric as if it were a weapon waiting to be discovered? I tried to push it from my mind, but I couldn't. That envelope became a presence in our home, louder than words, sharper than questions. Every time she smiled at her phone, every time she dressed in those clinging outfits, every time she touched me with that newfound hunger, the envelope whispered its silent truth. Something was wrong, something she wouldn't admit. I started drinking more in the evenings. It dulled the edge, blurred the suspicions that gnawed at me. She noticed, of course. One night, she asked, "Are you okay? You've been drinking more than usual." I looked at her, at those bright, guilty eyes, and almost laughed. "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." She nodded, but I saw the flicker of relief in her expression. She wanted me numb, I realized. She wanted me to stay just drunk enough, just blind enough, not to see the truth unraveling between us. Still, I couldn't help myself. I tested her, dropping small questions, watching her squirm. "Did you meet anyone interesting at the conference?" "Not really. Just the usual people. You seem to enjoy yourself." She smiled, too wide, too controlled. I did. It was nice to get away. Each answer was a brick in the wall she was building between us. And I, like a fool, kept pretending I didn't see it. The worst part was that I loved her. Despite the lies, despite the secrecy, despite the ghost of another man in our bed, I loved her. I loved the way she laughed when she forgot herself, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she hummed that tune without realizing it. I loved her, and it was killing me. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she reached for my hand. Her palm was warm, her grip gentle. "We're okay, right?" she asked softly. I looked at her, at the woman who had come back glowing, at the stranger who now sat beside me. "Yeah," I said, "we're okay." But we weren't. We were living in the silence between truths, in the unspoken shifts that widened every day. And deep down, I knew, it was only a matter of time before the silence cracked open, before the lab results she had hidden would force everything into the light. And when that happened, nothing in our marriage would ever be the same. The truth, when it began to reveal itself, didn't arrive in a confession. She never sat me down and told me what had happened. It came in pieces, slips of the tongue, looks in her eyes, the tone in her voice when she spoke about things she pretended didn't matter. I had to assemble it, like a puzzle scattered across a table. And the more I pieced together, the more I realized the woman who came back from the conference wasn't the same woman who had left. It started with the stories she told. She was careful, almost too careful, when she spoke about the trip. She gave me the facts, lectures, presentations, dinners with colleagues, but she never told me how she felt. That was unusual for her. She had always been animated after conferences, bubbling over with details about who said what, who embarrassed themselves, which speaker inspired her. This time, she was measured. Precise. Her words were edited before they left her lips. One evening, while she was in the shower, I glanced through the tote bag she had taken with her. I don't know what I was looking for, proof, maybe, or reassurance. I found nothing incriminating, just pamphlets, pens, a notebook filled with her neat handwriting. But tucked between the pages was a hotel key card. Room 504. It could have been hers, of course. But the way it was hidden, the way it was slipped between pages as though forgotten, made my chest tighten. Why keep it? Why bring it back at all? Unless it wasn't forgotten at all, unless it was a keepsake. I put it back exactly where I found it, my hands trembling. That night, when she curled against me in bed, her skin warm and her breath steady, I thought about room 504. I thought about what had happened behind that door, about the way she had returned glowing, humming, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. I told myself I wouldn't imagine. But of course, I did. I imagined her at the conference bar, dressed in one of those sleek dresses she rarely wore for me anymore. I imagined a man approaching, confident, charming, someone who saw her not as a wife, not as a mother, but as a woman. I imagined the way she would have smiled, shy at first, then freer as the drinks flowed. I imagined laughter that wasn't for me, touches that began innocently and grew bolder. I imagined her walking with him down the hotel corridor, her heels clicking, her heart racing, torn between guilt and hunger. I imagined the moment she hesitated outside room 504, the way his hand might have brushed hers, steadying her, tempting her. I imagined her stepping inside, the door clicking shut behind them. I hated myself for imagining it. And yet, I couldn't stop. She was different when she came back to me, and it wasn't just in the way she smiled or the way she dressed. It was in her body, in her very presence. She had been touched, awakened, in ways I hadn't managed in years. I knew it. My body knew it every time she kissed me with that strange mixture of eagerness and guilt. The glow wasn't just happiness. It was possession. She had been claimed by another man, even if only for a night, and that claim lingered on her skin, in her voice, in her silence. I began to notice things I had overlooked before. The faint mark near her collarbone that hadn't been there when she left. The way she flinched slightly when I asked too directly about her trip. The way she sometimes smiled at nothing, lost in a memory she wouldn't share. One evening, after too many drinks, I pushed her harder than usual. "Tell me something real about the conference," I said. "Not work. Something you actually remember." She looked at me sharply, almost defensively. "Why do you ask like that?" "Because you're holding something back," I said. "You've been different." For a moment, I thought she would confess. Her lips parted, her eyes softened, as if the truth was pressing against her throat. But then she shook her head and smiled faintly. "You're imagining things. I just needed time away. That's all." Her denial was gentle, but it cut deeper than a blade. Because it confirmed everything. If there was nothing to hide, she wouldn't have needed to lie. Later that night, while she slept, I stared at her. I watched her chest rise and fall, her hair spilling across the pillow. She looked peaceful, innocent even. But I couldn't shake the image of her in room 504, her body arching beneath another man's hands, her lips whispering things she would never whisper to me. The torture was that I loved her still. I loved her more fiercely than I ever had. But my love had curdled into obsession, into a need to know the details she refused to give. The lab result made everything worse. She had hidden it, but she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. I didn't know what it said, I still don't. But I knew it wasn't nothing. I knew it was connected to the glow, to the secrecy, to room 504. She grew quieter after that. The glow dimmed, replaced by something brittle, fragile. She still smiled, still dressed with care, but it was forced now, painted over dread. She was carrying something inside her, whether a fear, a memory, or something else entirely, I couldn't tell. And me, I carried the silence. I told no one, not my friends, not my family. Who could I tell? That my wife had gone to a conference and come back glowing, only to dim under the weight of a hidden lab result. That I suspected her of things she would never admit, things I couldn't prove. So I stayed anonymous. I played my role as the husband, the provider, the man who didn't ask too many questions. But inside, I was unraveling. Every time she touched me, I felt him. Every time she smiled, I saw his shadow. Every time she hummed that tune, I wondered if it was a song they had shared, something he had whispered in her ear as she melted into him. And the worst part, a small, shameful part of me envied her. Envied the man who had seen her that way, who had ignited her, who had taken her beyond the dull routines of our marriage. He had given her something I hadn't in years, something she hadn't dared to even ask me for. I don't know his name. I don't know his face. I don't know if he was a stranger or someone she already knew. All I know is that she came back glowing because of him. And she saw the lab result because of him too. That is the hidden adventure. The thing she will never say, the thing I will never hear from her lips. But I know it. I feel it in the way my chest tightens when she looks at me with guilty eyes. I feel it in the silence we share when we lie side by side in bed. And though I cannot prove it, though she will never admit it, the truth is written in her glow, in her fear, in the envelope buried beneath scarves. She went away as my wife. She came back as something else. And I am left to love the stranger she has become. The envelope haunted me. I tried to forget it, to convince myself that it was nothing more than routine medical jargon, numbers and terms I wouldn't understand. But every time I opened the drawer and saw her scarves piled neatly on top of it, I felt the weight of the secret pressing down. I didn't touch it again. Partly because I was afraid of what it would confirm, and partly because I knew if I crossed that line, if I tore it open, I would never be able to look her in the eye without demanding answers. So I left it buried, the way she wanted. But I couldn't bury the questions. She changed after the appointment. The glow she had carried home from the conference dulled, replaced with shadows. She was still affectionate, still warm, but there was hesitation in her touch now. Her laughter came less easily. She checked her phone less often, as though whatever had lived there before had ended abruptly. The first night after she came home with the envelope, I found her in the bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub with the shower running behind her. She wasn't crying, but her face was pale, her lips pressed tight as if holding back a storm. When she saw me in the doorway, she forced a smile. "Water's taking forever to heat up," she said casually, though her voice betrayed her. I wanted to ask her then. Wanted to kneel in front of her, take her hands in mine, and demand to know what the result had said. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded and told her I'd be downstairs. She exhaled with visible relief when I left. The silence between us grew heavier in the following days. She still went to work, still moved through the motions of life, but her eyes betrayed her. There was fear there, deep, gnawing fear. At night, she tossed and turned beside me. Sometimes, she would wake abruptly, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. When I asked what was wrong, she shook her head. "Just a bad dream," she whispered. But the way she clutched me afterward told me the nightmare wasn't only in her sleep. I began to connect the dots in ways I didn't want to. The glow, the secrecy, the key card, the envelope, and now, the fear. It all pointed to one conclusion I tried to resist. Something had happened at that conference, something reckless, something dangerous, and the lab result was the consequence. My mind became a cruel storyteller, spinning endless scenarios. I imagined her sitting in the clinic, waiting nervously as the nurse handed her the paper. I imagined her scanning the words, her heart sinking as she realized what it meant. I imagined her wondering if she had brought something back, something she couldn't explain to me, something that tied her forever to whoever had touched her in room 504. One night, after another restless silence, I couldn't bear it anymore. I turned to her in bed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What did the result say?" She froze. Even in the dark, I could see her eyes flicker. She stayed silent for a long time, long enough that I thought she would ignore the question completely. Finally, she said, "It was nothing. Just routine." "Then why hide it?" I asked. Her breath caught. She turned away from me, pulling the blanket higher. "Because it's private. Not everything has to be shared." Her words stung. Private. As if she and I weren't bound by vows, as if what entered her body didn't touch mine too. I wanted to argue, to insist, but I stopped myself. Because I could hear the tremor in her voice, the edge of panic she was trying to mask. Whatever was on that paper, it wasn't nothing. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note, no explanation. She came back late that evening, her eyes red as though she had been crying. When I asked where she had been, she said she needed some air. I didn't push. I was afraid that if I did, she might shatter completely. The glow that had once thrilled and terrified me was gone now. What remained was something darker. Dread, guilt, the heavy silence of a woman carrying a secret too large to share. And yet, strangely, I still loved her. Maybe more than ever. Because I could see how broken she was, how fragile. She wasn't the confident, glowing woman who had stepped off the plane. She was my wife again, vulnerable, haunted, human. It would have been easier if she had confessed. If she had looked me in the eye and said, "Yes, I strayed. Yes, I risked everything. Yes, this is the price." But she didn't. She carried it alone, choosing silence over truth. And in that silence, I was trapped with her. There were nights I would watch her as she slept, my chest aching. I wanted to reach inside her mind, to take the burden from her. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that I could forgive her, that I just needed honesty. But I couldn't, because honesty would demand that I forgive not just her, but the man in room 504, the man who had left his shadow between us. So I stayed quiet, and so did she. Weeks passed. The envelope remained buried beneath scarves, untouched. She never brought it up, and neither did I. We moved through life like actors reciting lines, pretending the play was the same as before, even though the script had changed. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I saw her touch the drawer softly, almost reverently. As if she was reminding herself it was still there, as if she couldn't forget. The glow that once lit our home had vanished. In its place was a coldness neither of us dared to name. And that was when I realized, the lab result hadn't just ended her adventure. It had ended us, too. Not in divorce papers, not in screaming fights, not in confessions, but in silence. Because silence is its own kind of ending. And we were living in it, every day. I have often asked myself what silence does to a man. Some people say silence is golden, but I know now that silence is also heavy, sharp, and suffocating. It hangs around your neck like a chain, not loosening, not rattling, just there, an invisible reminder of what you cannot say and what you cannot change. When she came back from the conference, she glowed. That image of her, laughter spilling too easily, lips painted redder than usual, eyes brighter than they had been in years, is etched into me like a photograph. I didn't know then that I was looking at a woman coming back from a different world, a world she had stepped into and let consume her. A world I could never ask about. But then the lab result came. And the glow dimmed. The air in our house became thick, as if every word she tried to say had to fight for space, as if even silence wanted to expand and fill the walls. She never told me outright what the paper said, but I knew. You learn to read between lines when you live with someone long enough. Her hands shook when she read it. Her jaw tightened, and in the days that followed, I noticed the sudden pharmacy runs, the endless calls she took in the other room, the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching, half sorry, half terrified. I could have confronted her. I could have laid it all bare, asked the questions that burned in my chest, forced her to tell me what happened at that conference. But I didn't, and I think that is why I'm here, writing anonymously, telling strangers instead of the man I am supposed to be. Because she wasn't caught, she wasn't exposed, she still walks around with her mask intact. To the world, to our friends, to her family, she is still the same woman, polished, careful, respectable. Nobody knows the truth except her, and now me, the one who pretends not to know. Silence became our arrangement, an unspoken deal, and what a cruel deal it is. I carry the image of her glowing return and the shadow of her fearful lab result together in my head. They are inseparable, two sides of the same coin. Every time she laughs too loud, I remember how she glowed. Every time her smile falters, I remember the lab slip she shoved into the drawer, face down, as if paper could erase truth. I find myself asking questions I will never voice. Was it worth it for her? Did he make her feel more alive in those days than I ever did in years? Did she gamble with more than her marriage? Did she gamble with her health, her body, her very sense of self? I imagine her in that hotel room, far from me, far from the version of herself that fit into this house. I imagine the heat, the stolen touches, the reckless surrender. I imagine the look on her face when she realized passion could still consume her, that she could still be wanted like that. And then I imagine her face when she saw the lab result. That's what kills me most. That moment must have been hers alone, nobody else in the room, no audience to share it with. Just her, holding the paper, her body probably going cold. And maybe in that instant she wished she could go back, undo everything, scrub away the conference glow and come home to me untouched, unmarked. But time doesn't rewind, so here we are. The weight of silence has changed me too. I walk around with a secret bigger than myself. I smile at her in public, I hold her hand when people are watching, and yet inside I feel like I am shaking with a truth nobody else can see. The duality is exhausting. Sometimes I wonder what kind of man this makes me. Am I a coward for staying quiet? Or am I merciful, allowing her to keep her world intact? I'll never know. What I do know is that stories like ours don't end with fireworks or explosions. They end with whispers, with silences, with the slow erosion of something sacred until only the bones are left. That's why I'm here, writing to faceless strangers who will never know my name or hers. Maybe it's my way of breaking the silence without actually breaking it. She is still here with me. She still cooks, still asks about my day, still laughs at the right times, still plays the part of a wife who is safe and steady. But every time I look at her, I see the ghost of the conference, and I hear the echo of that paper being unfolded. And maybe that is the true punishment. Not the glow, not the result, not the danger of what she did, but the silence we live in now. Because silence, I have learned, is not empty. Silence is full, full of the words you can't say, the truths you can't voice, the futures you can't have. So I write this here, anonymously, not to expose her but to remind myself that I am still alive. That I still feel, that even though I remain silent in my home, I can scream quietly here with words. This is my scream, this is our silence, and this is why, when she came back from the conference glowing until she saw the lab result, nothing in our lives was ever the same again. Her glow when she returned from that conference was more than just happiness, it was the shine of a woman who had stepped outside the boundaries of her marriage and tasted something forbidden. But the lab result was the cruel reminder that every thrill comes with a cost, and sometimes the cost follows you home. I never exposed her. I never confronted her. Instead, I chose silence, the kind of silence that eats you alive from the inside, the kind that weighs more than words. She still plays her role, and I still play mine. But behind our smiles and dinners, behind the casual conversations and public appearances, lives a truth only the two of us know. Her glow faded the moment that paper was unfolded. And that is what betrayal truly does. It doesn't always shatter things with noise. Sometimes it kills slowly, quietly, leaving behind the bones of a marriage dressed in pretense. This story is not about revenge. It's not about rage. It's about the shadow of choices, the weight of silence, and the heavy cost of secrets. Inseparable, two sides of the same coin. Every time she laughs too loud, I remember how she glowed. Every time her smile falters, I remember the lab slip she shoved into the drawer, face down, as if paper could erase truth. I find myself asking questions I will never voice. Was it worth it for her? Did he make her feel more alive in those days than I ever did in years? Did she gamble with more than her marriage? Did she gamble with her health, her body, her very sense of self? I imagine her in that hotel room, far from me, far from the version of herself that fit into this house. I imagine the heat, the stolen touches, the reckless surrender. I imagine the look on her face when she realized passion could still consume her, that she could still be wanted like that. And then I imagine her face when she saw the lab result. That's what kills me most. That moment must have been hers alone, nobody else in the room, no audience to share it with. Just her, holding the paper, her body probably going cold. And maybe in that instant she wished she could go back, undo everything, scrub away the conference glow and come home to me untouched, unmarked. But time doesn't rewind, so here we are. The weight of silence has changed me too. I walk around with a secret bigger than myself. I smile at her in public, I hold her hand when people are watching, and yet inside I feel like I am shaking with a truth nobody else can see. The duality is exhausting. Sometimes I wonder what kind of man this makes me. Am I a coward for staying quiet? Or am I merciful, allowing her to keep her world intact? I'll never know. What I do know is that stories like ours don't end with fireworks or explosions. They end with whispers, with silences, with the slow erosion of something sacred until only the bones are left. That's why I'm here, writing to faceless strangers who will never know my name or hers. Maybe it's my way of breaking the silence without actually breaking it. She is still here with me. She still cooks, still asks about my day, still laughs at the right times, still plays the part of a wife who is safe and steady. But every time I look at her, I see the ghost of the conference, and I hear the echo of that paper being unfolded. And maybe that is the true punishment. Not the glow, not the result, not the danger of what she did, but the silence we live in now. Because silence, I have learned, is not empty. Silence is full of the words you can't say, the truths you can't voice, the futures you can't have. So I write this here, anonymously, not to expose her but to remind myself that I am still alive. That I still feel, that even though I remain silent in my home, I can scream quietly here with words. This is my scream. This is our silence. And this is why, when she came back from the conference glowing until she saw the lab result, nothing in our lives was ever the same again. Her glow when she returned from that conference was more than just happiness, it was the shine of a woman who had stepped outside the boundaries of her marriage and tasted something forbidden. But the lab result was the cruel reminder that every thrill comes with a cost, and sometimes the cost follows you home. I never exposed her. I never confronted her. Instead, I chose silence, the kind of silence that eats you alive from the inside, the kind that weighs more than words. She still plays her role, and I still play mine. But behind our smiles and dinners, behind the casual conversations and public appearances, lives a truth only the two of us know. Her glow faded the moment that paper was unfolded. And that is what betrayal truly does. It doesn't always shatter things with noise. Sometimes it kills slowly, quietly, leaving behind the bones of a marriage dressed in pretense. This story is not about revenge. It's not about rage. It's about the shadow of choices, the weight of silence, and the heavy cost of secrets. Glow was never meant to last. Disclaimer. This story is a work of mature-themed narrative fiction, inspired by real-life situations but shared in an anonymous, dramatized format. The names, locations, and details have been changed to protect identities. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Viewer-reader discretion is advised, as the content may not be suitable for all audiences. If you've stayed with me through this true infidelity story, then you understand that not all betrayals are loud. Some are silent, some are hidden, and some, like mine, are carried inside, shared only with strangers who will never know my name. For more real-life infidelity confessions, anonymous betrayal stories, and mature relationship truths, make sure you subscribe and stay connected. Every week, we bring you voices that are rarely heard, people living behind masks, telling their secrets only here. Don't miss the next story. Subscribe, share, and join the growing community of readers who know that sometimes the deepest truths live in silence.